The world was bright, sharp, and smelled of cut grass and ozone. It was the scent of the choosing, and for the first time in my life, I believed I might be happy. My name is Elise, and was the blacksmith's daughter. In the Stormfang Pack, that meant I was one step above the dirt the werewolves walked on. Humans were tolerated, useful for the things their clever hands could make, but we were never part of them. But I had a secret that thrummed under my skin, a pull toward the alpha himself, Leon. It was a golden cord I could feel in my chest, tying me to the pack house on the hill. It was the whisper of mate. I knew it. I knew it the way I knew the heat of my father's forge. And today, at the public choosing ceremony, he would finally know it too. He would see me. My father had saved for months to buy me the simple blue dress I wore. It was clean, and it fit, and it made me feel almost pretty. I stood with the other humans and omegas at the edge of the great lawn, my heart trying to hammer its way out of my ribs. The pack's great and powerful families stood near the front, their daughters preening in silks and jewels. Among them, Isabella, the daughter of the noble from the Blackwood territory, her eyes as sharp and cold as obsidian chips. Then he came. Alpha Leon. He was everything an alpha should be: tall, powerful, with hair the color of midnight and eyes that held the storm. But as he walked onto the ceremonial platform, my heart stuttered. He looked wrong. The man I had secretly watched, the man who laughed with his betas and showed kindness to the pack's children, was gone. This Leon was a statue. His eyes were flat, glazed, as if he were looking through us all. He will choose his political bride, someone whispered behind me. It's the only way to fulfill the blood pact and save the pack from the blight. No, I thought, my hands clenching. The moon goddess wouldn't be so cruel. The bond, he has to feel the bond. He scanned the crowd. His eyes passed over me. Nothing. No recognition. No spark. It was as if I was just another shadow. My breath hitched. The golden cord in my chest felt cold. He moved from the platform, walking between the rows of hopefuls. He walked past the noble daughters, his expression unchanged. He walked past Isabella, who looked momentarily furious. He walked straight toward me. He feels it. My heart exploded with relief. I could barely breathe. The air crackled. This was it. The human blacksmith's daughter, chosen by the alpha. A true mate bond. He stopped less than a foot away. I could smell the pine and leather of his jacket. I forced myself to look up into his face. The eyes that met mine were not his. They were empty. Alpha, I whispered, my voice trembling. He looked at my face, my dress, my calloused hands. A flicker of something crossed his features. Pain? Confusion? It was gone in an instant. He turned away from me. The sound that escaped my throat was a broken gasp. He walked, each step a hammer blow, back to the platform. He stood beside Isabella. She smirked, a look of pure triumph, and slipped her hand into his. Leon didn't even look at her. He faced the crowd, his voice booming but dead. As Alpha of the Stormfang, I must secure the future of this pack. The blight on our lands requires a new blood pact. I have made my choice. The world tilted. No. Please no. He looked across the crowd, his gaze landing directly on me again. This time, there was no emptiness. There was only a cold, devastating finality. Elise, daughter of Cole, he said. My name, from his lips, was a wound. The entire pack turned to stare at me. I was pinned by thousands of eyes. Alpha Leon of the Stormfang Pack. His voice was loud, formal, and broke me into 1,000 pieces. Hereby reject you as my mate. The golden cord in my chest didn't just break. It shattered, exploding into icy shards that pierced every part of my soul. The pain was physical. I clutched my chest, my knees buckling. It wasn't just sadness. It was a curse. I could feel it, a silver, freezing poison flooding my veins, emanating from him to me. I was dying. He was killing me. He turned his back on me, taking Isabella's hand and raising it high. I choose Isabella of Blackwood. The alliance is sealed. The pack cheered, but it was a distant, roaring sound. I saw my father, his face pale with horror, pushing through the crowd toward me. But I couldn't wait for him. I was the rejected. I was nothing. With the last of my strength, I turned and ran. I ran from the lawn, from the stairs, from the man who had just destroyed me. I ran with the feeling of icy death chasing my heels, and for the first time, I felt the strange, silvery mark on my shoulder, a mark I'd had since birth, shaped like a crescent moon, burn. It burned with a cold, agonizing fire, as if the moon goddess herself was weeping for me. Or perhaps she was angry. I didn't know. All I knew was the pain and the overwhelming, soul-crushing fact I was rejected. And in our world, a rejection was a death sentence. Wasn't that intense? If you're hooked and want to know what happens to Elise and the cold-hearted alpha, do me a huge favor. Please subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave a comment below. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single chapter of this new story. Your support means everything. Now, on to Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The Mark of the Moon. The forge was the only place the cold couldn't reach me. It had been 3 days since the choosing. 3 days since my life had ended. The icy poison of the rejection curse hadn't killed me, not yet. It had settled deep in my bones, a permanent, shivering sickness that no amount of fire could warm. I worked mechanically, my hammer rising and falling against the anvil. Clang. Clang, clang. The rhythm was a prayer. The sound was a scream. My father, Cole, watched me from the doorway of our small cottage, his face a mask of helpless worry. He was a good man, a human who had earned his place here through sweat and skill. He'd taught me the trade, taught me to be strong. But he hadn't taught me how to survive this. Elise, he said, his voice rough. You need to eat. I shook my head, not looking up. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten in 3 days. He stepped into the forge, the scent of the stew he'd made for me wafting in. It smelled like ash. Everything smelled like ash. I can't, Dad. My voice was a croak. It hurts. It hurt. The rejection wasn't just an emotional wound. It was a physical one. The space in my chest where the golden cord had been was now a hollow, frozen void. Every breath was a razor blade. He's not worth this, my father said, his voice low and angry. No man is. He's not a man, I whispered, finally lowering the hammer. The heavy tool clattered to the dirt floor. He's an alpha. And he broke the bond. Then he's a fool. I finally looked at him, tears welling for the first time since I'd fled the lawn. He didn't even see me, Dad. He looked at me, and it was like I was glass. And then, when he said the words, it was like he hated me. It's this blood-pact, Dad spat, kicking a stray piece of coal. This whole pack is sick. The blight in the fields. They think this marriage to that Blackwood witch will cure it. They're desperate. But his words didn't matter. The why didn't matter. All that mattered was the cold. News had traveled fast. The wedding was set for the full moon, just 4 days away. The pack was in a frenzy of celebration. The rejection of a lowly human blacksmith's daughter was already forgotten, a tiny footnote in the grand story of their salvation. I was invisible again. No, I was worse than invisible. I was a pariah. When I dared to go to the market for supplies yesterday, the pack members, wolves I had known my entire life, had turned their backs. They averted their eyes. The Omegas, who were usually kind, hurried away, pulling their children close. To be rejected was to be cursed. Unclean. A bad omen. I was contagious. Let's leave, my father said suddenly, his eyes bright with a desperate idea. We can pack the wagon tonight. Be gone by morning. There are other towns, other places. We don't need these monsters. I wanted to. Oh, how I wanted to. But I knew the truth. I can't, I whispered, clutching my chest as a fresh wave of ice shot through me. The bond, it's tied to him. to the territory. If I leave, the distance will stretch it until it snaps. I'll be dead before we reach the highway. My father's face crumpled. He was a big man, strong from the forge, but in that moment, he looked old and broken. He had lost my mother to a rogue wolf attack 10 years ago. Now he was watching his daughter die in slow motion. He pulled me into a hug, his flannel shirt smelling of smoke and soap. I buried my face in his chest, but I couldn't cry. The curse had frozen my tears. "I'm so cold, Dad," I breathed. "I know, baby. I know." He led me inside, away from the forge, and sat me by the hearth. He wrapped me in my mother's thickest quilt and put a mug of hot broth in my hands. My fingers were so numb I could barely hold it. The cottage was quiet. The sun set, and the woods outside our door grew dark. I watched the fire, trying to pretend its heat could reach me. The wedding was tomorrow. He would be hers. He would complete the bond with another, and the rejection would become permanent. Irreversible. Breaking a mating rejection curse means death. Everyone knew the law. If I fought this, if I even spoke of the bond, he could have me executed. If he tried to break it, his alpha power would shatter, and he would die. We were trapped. I must have dozed, because I woke with a start. The fire was low, and my father was asleep in his chair opposite me, a shotgun resting across his lap. My heart clenched. He was trying to protect me, but this was a sickness he couldn't fight. Something was wrong. The air in the cottage was different, thicker. The cold in my chest was still there, but it was fighting against a new sensation. A strange, pulling warmth. It wasn't coming from the fire. It was coming from outside. I stood, the quilt falling from my shoulders. The pulling was insistent, a thrum 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 under my skin that I'd never felt before. I went to the window and pushed aside the curtain. The full moon was high, bathing the clearing in stark, silver light. It was beautiful and terrifying. And then I saw it. The warmth. The pull. It was the moon. It felt like the moonlight was a physical thing, a river of silver energy pouring from the sky and flowing directly into me. It streamed into the window, into my skin, and went straight for the hollow, frozen void in my chest. I gasped as the silver light hit the ice. It didn't melt it. It battled it. The crescent-shaped mark on my shoulder, the one I'd had my whole life, suddenly blazed with heat. It was a searing, agonizing pain, 1,000 times hotter than the forge. I cried out, clutching my shoulder, and fell to my knees. What is happening to me? The pain was overwhelming. It was fire and ice, war inside my body. The rejection curse was fighting this new power, and I was the battlefield. I looked at my hands, shaking in the moonlight. My fingernails. They looked wrong. Longer. Thicker. I scrambled to the small, cracked mirror by the door. My father was still asleep, snoring softly, oblivious. I looked at my reflection. My face was pale, streaked with sweat. But my eyes, my dull, brown, human eyes were gone. Staring back at me were 2 orbs of liquid, luminous silver. They were glowing. And as I watched, my pupils elongated, sharpening into something not quite human. I opened my mouth to scream, but the sound that came out wasn't a scream. It was a low, guttural growl. A deep, primal sound that came from a chest I no longer recognized. My bones began to burn. My muscles twisted. The little cottage, my home, suddenly felt like a cage. The moon was calling me. And some new, terrifying instinct inside me wanted to answer. Chapter 2. The Shadow at the Window. The pain of the moon madness, or whatever it was, finally subsided as the sky began to gray with dawn. I was left trembling on the cottage floor, my father still asleep, my reflection mercifully normal. My eyes were brown again. My nails were my own. But I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had felt. I was breaking. The curse was driving me insane. I spent the day in a daze, working the forge with a frantic energy. Hammer. Fold. Quench. Hammer. Fold. Quench. I was making a set of hunting knives, but I was really just trying to sweat out the memory of those silver eyes. Today was the wedding. Every toll of the pack's ceremonial bell, ringing out from the great hall on the hill, was a new spike of ice in my heart. Each one announced a step in the ceremony. The gathering, the vows, the binding. Around noon, the final, deepest bell rang, the one that signaled the completion. He was married. He was hers. The world went white. The hammer slipped from my nerveless fingers and crashed to the ground. The icy curse, which had been a dull, throbbing sickness, exploded. It was a tidal wave of pure agony. I collapsed, my body convulsing, the void in my chest threatening to suck me into nothingness. "Elise," my father yelled, running to me. I couldn't speak. I could only writhe on the dirt floor of the forge, my body arching in a silent scream. The bond was being desecrated, torn, and I was tied to every second of it. This was the true death. He half carried, half dragged me inside, laying me on my narrow bed. He bathed my face with a cool cloth, his hands, usually so steady, shaking violently. "Stay with me," he pleaded. "Elise, don't you leave me. Stay with me." I was so cold. The world was fading to black. I was floating away on a frozen river. This is it, I thought. It's over. The fever took me. I spent the next 2 days in a delirium, floating in a dark, cold sea. My father's voice was a distant echo. The world was gone. There was only the pain. On the third night, I woke. The fever had broken. The crushing agony had wrecked. The crushing agony had receded, settling back into the familiar, shivering sickness. I was weak, my bones feeling like hollow bird beak / hollow bird bone / hollow bird bone / hollow bird bone, but I was alive. My father was slumped in his chair, finally lost to an exhausted sleep. The cottage was silent. But I wasn't alone. I felt a presence, a warmth that had nothing to do with the moon. It was a focused, living heat, and it was outside. My heart hammered. Rogues? Had news of my weakness traveled? I slipped from the bed, my legs trembling. I crept to the window and peered out. The moon was a half-sliver, casting weak light on the clearing. At the edge of the woods, perfectly still, stood a wolf. I nearly choked. It was the largest wolf I had ever seen. Taller than my father, with fur as black as a starless night. But it wasn't a rogue. Rogues were mangy, desperate. This creature was pure power. He stood with a regal stillness, a king in the shadows. He was watching the cottage. Watching me. Fear came first, cold and sharp. Then, something else. The cold in my chest, the rejection curse, seemed to quiet. It was still there, but it was muffled, as if the wolf's presence was a thick blanket, shielding me from the worst of it. The wolf took a cautious step into the moonlight. My breath caught. His eyes. They were not the flat, glazed, empty eyes of the alpha who had rejected me. They were not the cold, dead eyes of the man who had married Isabella. They were a piercing, stormy gray. And they were filled with a frantic, desperate, and undeniable longing. It was him. Not Leon, the man, but Leon, the wolf. He took another step, and I saw a thin, jagged scar over his left eye, one I had seen a dozen times when he, the man, had come to the forge to order blades. "Leon?" I breathed, my hand pressing against the cold glass. At the sound of my voice, his head tilted. A low, agonizing whine rumbled from his massive chest. It was a sound of apology, of pain, of a desperate need he couldn't voice. He moved toward the cottage, but as he reached the halfway point of the clearing, he flinched. He stopped, as if hitting an invisible wall. He paced, frustrated, his claws digging trenches in the dirt. He couldn't get closer. Magic, I realized. This was the twist of the knife. He had rejected me. He had married another. And now his wolf, his soul, was coming to my window, begging forgiveness. I should have felt anger. I should have felt hatred. I felt a devastating pity. He was trapped. We both were. I stayed at the window, and he stayed at the edge of the clearing for hours. We just watched each other. His presence was a balm, a strange, warm comfort that held the icy curse at bay. For the first time in a week, I didn't feel like I was dying. As the first hint of dawn touched the sky, he whined again, a sound of pure reluctance. He backed away, one step at a time, his stormy eyes never leaving my face. Then, as if a chain had been yanked, he turned and vanished into the trees. The moment he was gone, the curse slammed back into me with a vengeance. I doubled over, gasping, the ice returning. But something was different. I wasn't just cold. I was furious. That witch. Isabella. This was her doing. The glazed eyes, the empty voice. The blood pact. It wasn't an alliance, it was an enslavement. She hadn't just taken my mate. She had caged him. She had stolen his wolf, his soul, and left the man as an empty puppet. I looked at my hands. I thought of the silver eyes I'd seen in the mirror. The growl in my own chest. I had been passively dying. But now I had a reason to live. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to fight. And I was going to get him back. Chapter 3. The Witch's Mark. The wolf came back the next night. And the night after that. I started calling him Shadow in my mind. It was easier than calling him Leon. Leon was the man who had destroyed me. Shadow was the soul who was trying to save me. He kept his distance, that same invisible wall holding him at the edge of the woods. But he was there. He was my silent, midnight guardian. And with every night he watched me, I felt a little stronger. The curse was still a constant, cold ache, but it no longer threatened to kill me. It was as if his presence, his loyalty, was a shield. The moon sickness, however, was getting worse. My senses were sharpening. When I worked the forge, I could smell the different types of metal in the coal. I could hear the heartbeat of the mouse hiding under the woodpile. The world, which had been gray and muffled by the curse, was now screaming with detail. And my body was changing. I saw it in glimpses. The flash of silver in my eyes when I was angry. The way my father's hunting dogs, once my friends, now whined and cowered when I came near. I was becoming something. And it terrified me. I also saw the pack. The blood pact was a lie. I had to go into the village to sell the knives I'd finished, a task I dreaded. The pack lands, which were supposed to be healing, looked worse. The blight was spreading. The grass on the great lawn was yellow and brittle. The trees looked thirsty. A cold, unnatural mist hung in the air, even in the bright daylight. The pack members looked as bad as their land. They were thin, their eyes dull, their movements sluggish. It was as if the life was being leached out of all of them. Then I saw her. Isabella. The new Luna. She was standing on the steps of the pack house, giving orders to a few Omegas. Unlike everyone else, she was thriving. Her black hair was glossy, her skin radiant. She wore a deep crimson dress that stood out like a bloodstain against the dying world. And around her neck, on a silver chain, hung a black, shimmering amulet. Leon, the man, stood beside her. My heart seized. It was the first time I'd seen him since the choosing. He was a ghost. A handsome, empty shell. His stormy eyes were gone, replaced by that flat, glazed emptiness. He stared straight ahead, unmoving as she berated the Omegas. He was a puppet on her string. Isabella must have felt my gaze. Her head snapped around, her cold eyes locking on me from across the village square. The Omegas scuttled away. Isabella's lip curled in a sneer. She descended the steps and moved toward me, a predator gliding through the week. Leon followed a half-step behind, his movements stiff and unnatural. I stood my ground, my hand gripping the handle of the hammer at my belt. "The blacksmith's girl," she said, her voice like honeyed poison. "I'm surprised you're still here." I thought rejected trash withered away. The cold in my chest flared, but so did the other thing. The hot, silver anger. A growl rumbled in my throat before I could stop it. Isabella's eyes widened, just a fraction. She glanced at Leon. Our alpha was right to reject you. You're feral. He's not your alpha, I said, my voice low. He's your prisoner. The mask of civility dropped. Her face contorted with pure, venomous rage. You will not speak to me, little girl. You will pack your father's things and you will be gone by tomorrow's sundown. Or what? I challenged, my newfound boldness shocking me. Or I will have my mate. She stroked Leon's arm, and he didn't even flinch, put you down like the sick animal you are. I looked at Leon. I stared right into his empty eyes. He can't even see me, I whispered, the heartbreak fresh. Whatever you've done to him, it's killing the pack. Look around you. You're a parasite. She hissed, a sound that was not human, and for a second, her own eyes glowed with a sickly, dark energy. You know nothing. She raised her hand, and I saw a black, twisted symbol drawn on her palm in what looked like ash. She was about to do something. Isabella, a new voice called out. It was one of the pack elders, his face grim. The blight, it's in the well water. Isabella's attention snapped away from me. She cursed, a vile, sharp word. Deal with it. She turned and stalked back to the pack house, dragging her alpha puppet with her. But before she disappeared inside, she looked back at me, her eyes promising death. I was shaken, but I was also more certain than ever. She was a witch. That amulet was the source of her power. And she was draining the life from the Stormfang lands, from the pack, and from Leon, and funneling it all into herself. I hurried back to the forge, the encounter leaving a sour taste in my mouth. I felt tainted. That night, I waited for shadow. The moon was rising, bigger now, nearing its full strength again. The pull I felt from it was almost painful. I paced the forge, waiting for the black wolf to appear. The air was cold, but the forge was empty. He didn't come. 1 a.m., 2 a.m. The dread in my stomach was a cold, hard knot. He had never missed a night. I ran to the cottage, pulled on my boots, and grabbed a lantern. My father was asleep. I wouldn't wake him. This was my fight. Shadow? I called out, stepping into the woods. It was foolish. Suicidal. But I didn't care. I walked toward the invisible line he never crossed. And then I saw it. On the trunk of the great oak where he always stood, someone had painted a symbol in black, ashy paste. It was the same twisted, ugly mark I had seen on Isabella's hand. And at the base of the tree, blood. No, I whispered. I dropped the lantern, falling to my knees. The blood was dark in the moonlight, but I could smell it. It was his. He had come tonight. And her magic, her mark, had been waiting for him. It had hurt him. I touched the symbol on the tree. The moment my fingers brushed it, a jolt of black, cold energy shot up my arm, making me scream. It felt like death. I scrambled back, clutching my hand, which was now numb and tingling. Tears of rage, hot and real, finally streamed down my face. You will not have him, I hissed into the darkness. I looked down at my hand. The numbness was fading, replaced by a burning heat. The silver mark on my shoulder was burning too. The moon was almost full. And I knew, with a terrifying, absolute certainty, what was going to happen tomorrow night. The moon was calling. And this time, I was going to answer. Chapter 4. The Silver Wolf. The sun rose on the day of the full moon. I felt it like a countdown. Every tick of the clock in our cottage was a step closer to the pain, to the change I'd seen in the mirror. My father knew something was wrong. I was different. The fight with Isabella, the blood at the tree. I was vibrating with a dangerous energy I couldn't contain. Elise, he said, blocking my path as I tried to go to the forge. What happened in the woods? I saw the blood. It was his, I said, my voice flat. She marked the tree. She hurt him. Him? The wolf. His face was etched with confusion. Daughter. I don't understand. What is this wolf to you? I finally looked him in the eye. It's Leon. Or his wolf. His soul. She's controlling him, Dad. The man in the pack house is a puppet. The The real Leon, the one who is my mate, is trapped inside. My father, a man of logic, of iron and fire, should have told me I was crazy. He should have told me I was grieving, delirious. He just studied my face, his gaze drifting to my shoulder, where the crescent mark was visible under the strap of my tunic. That mark, he said quietly. Your mother, she had one too. She was from the wild lands, before she came here. She said it was a blessing from the moon. She said our line, it was special. What does that mean? I demanded. She died before she could tell me more, he said, his voice heavy with old grief. But she made me promise, if the moon ever called you, I was to let you go. The words hung in the air between us. It's calling, Dad. It's screaming. He nodded, his jaw tight. Then you do what you have to do. But you are not a monster, Elise. You are my daughter. His acceptance was a shield, as real as any his hands had ever forged. As dusk fell, the burning started. It began in my shoulder, at the mark, and spread like wildfire through my veins. The rejection curse was an iceberg in my chest, and this new fire was a volcano erupting beneath it. I have to go, I gasped, the pain making my knees weak. To the woods. I'm coming with you. No, I shouted, and the voice was a growl. It's not safe. Stay here. Please. I ran. I fled the cottage, fled the forge, and plunged into the darkness of the forest. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing in a heap in a small, moonlit clearing miles from home. The full moon was directly overhead, a perfect silver eye. It felt like it was staring into me. The pain was beyond anything I had ever imagined. The rejection. The moon sickness. They were tearing me apart. I screamed as my bones cracked. It was a wet, snapping sound, a tree breaking in an ice storm. My shoulders dislocated, reforming. My spine elongated. My legs twisted, bones fusing, muscles shredding and reknitting in an instant. It was body horror. It was agony. I was dying. I was being remade. I tried to scream my father's name, but my throat was changing. My senses exploded. I could smell the damp earth, the fierce scent of a rabbit a mile away, and him. Pine. Leather. And the copper tang of old blood. He was close. The pain peaked. My world went black. When I woke, I was on my stomach. The ground was cold and damp under my paws. I lifted my head. The world was sharp. The colors were a million shades I'd never seen. My sense of smell was a universe. I looked down. I saw two black-clawed paws. I scrambled to my feet, my balance awkward, unsteady. I was on 4 legs. I moved to a pool of water, a stream nearby, and looked at my reflection. Staring back at me was not Elise. It was a wolf. I was smaller than the pack wolves, sleek and wiry. And my fur, it wasn't brown or black. It was silver. All over. I looked as if I had been dipped in liquid moonlight. My eyes were the same luminous silver I had seen in the mirror. I am a wolf. The realization didn't come with fear. It came with peace. The cold was gone. I stood there stunned. The rejection curse, the icy void that had been my constant companion, it was silent. The bond was still there, a warm, golden hum, but the pain of the rejection was gone. I lifted my head and, for the first time, truly felt the bond. It wasn't just a cord to Leon. It was a pull, a beacon. He was near. He was hurt. A low whine came from the shadows. I turned. There, at the edge of the clearing, was Shadow. The great black wolf. He was limping. His side was matted with dried blood from the witch's mark. He looked at me, his head low, his stormy eyes full of confusion and wonder. He didn't see me as a threat. He saw me as an equal. I took a step toward him. He whined, a soft, questioning sound. I wasn't the human girl he had been protecting. I was one of him. I nudged his wounded side with my new, silver snout. He licked my face, his tongue rough. The bond flared between us, no longer a source of pain, but a bright, brilliant light. I understood. The rejection was for Elise the human. The curse was bound to my human form. But Isabella, in her arrogance, had never accounted for this. Elise the wolf was never rejected. This new part of me, this moon-blessed creature, was free. I nudged Shadow again, this time with purpose. "Run with me." He seemed to understand. He gave a short, happy bark, his limp forgotten. He took off, and I was right behind him. We ran. We tore through the forest, a black shadow and a silver light. I had never felt so alive. My new body was perfect. It was strong, it was fast. I could feel the earth under my paws, the wind in my fur. I was free. We ran for hours, not as alpha and rejected, not as man and human, but as two halves of the same soul. The curse was broken. At least, it was for tonight. As the moon began to set, the truth settled on me. This was temporary. When the sun rose, I would be human again. The curse would return. This wasn't a solution. It was a loophole. Shadow seemed to feel my change in mood. He stopped, nudging me. "What's wrong?" I looked at him, and I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just save myself on full moons. I had to save him. The man. I changed my direction, heading north, toward the mountains. "Follow me," I pushed the thought at him. "I know you're trapped. Show me where. Show me how to save you." He seemed to understand. He took the lead, and this time, he wasn't just running for joy. He was running with a desperate purpose. He was taking me to the man. He was taking me to Leon. Chapter 5. The Prison of Thorns. We ran for what felt like hours, deeper into the packlands than I had ever dared to go. The territory was vast, a kingdom of mountains and dark forests tucked away in the Pacific Northwest. Shadow, my mate's soul, led me with a grim purpose, his limp growing more pronounced as his magical wound and the exhaustion of his nightly escape wore on him. I was his strength. My new silver wolf form was tireless, fueled by the moon and a righteous fury. I stayed at his flank, ready to support him, a silent promise that he was no longer alone. He led me to a ravine, a dark scar in the earth hidden by ancient, thorny briars. It was a place I had never known existed. The smell of dark magic was thick in the air, a sickening, sweet scent like rotting flowers. It was her magic. Shadow stopped at the edge, whining. The witch's magic was strongest here. This was a place he, as a wolf of the pack, was forbidden from entering. He looked at me, his stormy eyes pleading. I was not a pack wolf. I was not bound by her rules. I pushed through the thorns, my silver fur catching on the brambles, and descended into the ravine. A small cave, little more than a hole in the rock, was hidden at the bottom. The entrance was masked by a shimmering, oily curtain of black energy. I could feel the rejection curse, which had been silent in my wolf form, prickle at me. The magic here was related to the curse. It was its source. I braced myself and pushed my silver snout through the magical barrier. It resisted, like thick, cold tar, but it didn't hurt me. It snapped, and the black curtain dissolved. Inside, the cave was small and cold. And he was there. Leon. The man. My heart stopped. He was slumped against the far wall, his wrists and ankles bound not by ropes, but by thick, black thorns that seemed to grow from the rock itself. They were identical to the briars outside. He was awake. His eyes were open. But he was completely paralyzed. He was a prisoner in his own body. His gaze, dull and glazed, flickered to me. He saw a wolf. He tensed, expecting a rogue. I whined a low, soft sound. "It's me. I'm here." And then I did the only thing I could think of. I walked to him, lowered my head, and licked his hand. His eyes widened. The glaze, it flickered. Elise. His voice was a dry, broken whisper. It was the first time I had heard his real voice since that day. I whined again, nudging his hand. "Yes." "How?" he whispered, his breathing shallow. He was so weak. She was draining him dry. You are beautiful." A wolf of the moon. He knew. He understood. Isabella. He gasped, the effort to speak costing him everything. The amulet. It's not a blood pact. It's a parasite. She made a deal. With something old. Something from the shadows. This confirmed my fears. The amulet was the key. She's draining the pack, he whispered, his eyes closing for a second in pain. Draining me. Feeding it. And feeding herself. The curse, the rejection, it was part of her spell. To sever me. From my mate. From my soul. So she could take my power. He was right. By rejecting me, he had created a wound. She had poured her poison into it, using the rejection curse itself as the anchor for her control. My wolf. He breathed. He fights her. When she sleeps, he escapes. But he can't touch her. Her magic, it burns him. The amulet protects her. I nudged him, growling low in my throat. I can touch her. He seemed to understand. Tomorrow, he whispered, his eyes finding mine. The blood moon. She calls it a final consecration. A ritual. At the pack's heartstone. She's going to make the bond permanent. Drain the pack, drain me, for good. He was going to die. We were all going to die. The amulet, he repeated, his voice fading. You have to destroy the amulet. It's her life. Her connection. I licked his face, a promise. I will. I looked at the thorny bonds holding him. I tried to chew through them, but the dark magic seared my mouth. I couldn't free him. Not yet. Go, he whispered. She will wake. She will feel you. Go. Please, live. I didn't want to leave him. My soul screamed to stay, to protect him. But he was right. I was the only one who could stop her. I gave him one last, desperate lick, tasting the salt and sickness on his skin. I backed out of the cave. Shadow was waiting, pacing frantically. He could smell his own human form, the sickness, the magic. He was mad with the need to protect himself. I nudged him. I know. We will save him. I looked back at the cave. I had a plan. Isabella thought she had broken me. She thought I was a weak, dying human girl. She was about to find out what a moon-marked wolf could do. We ran back to the forge, the black wolf and the silver, side by side. I arrived just as the sun's first ray hit the horizon. The transformation back was as agonizing as the first. The fire, the breaking, the reforming. I collapsed onto the forge floor, human again. And the curse, it slammed back into me. The icy, agonizing cold. But this time, I welcomed it. It was a reminder. It was fuel. He's alive, I gasped, as my father ran in, having heard my screams. I grabbed my heaviest hammer. Elise? What are you? She has him in a cave. She's killing him. She's killing everyone. I looked at him, my eyes, now human brown, blazing with silver fire. Tonight, at the blood moon, I'm ending this. My father looked at the hammer, then at me, then at the silver fur still clinging to my tunic. He didn't argue. He just went to his own anvil and picked up his largest, sharpest forge axe. Then we'd better be ready, he said. No witch or alpha or pack hurts my daughter. Chapter 6. The Blood Moon and the Broken Curse. The blood moon rose, staining the sky a sickening, angry red. It cast the dying pack lands in a spectral light. The air was heavy, coiling with dark energy that emanated from the center of the territory, from the Heartstone. My father and I moved through the shadows. He was armed with his axe and a grim resolve. I was armed with my hammer, my new, wild instincts, and a rage so cold it burned. The rejection curse was a fire and ice war inside me, worse than ever. The blood moon amplified Isabella's magic, and the curse was her anchor. I had to fight just to stay upright. But I also felt my moon, the silver one, fighting back. I was a weapon, balanced on a knife's edge. We reached the clearing. The entire pack was there, but they were not there. They stood in concentric circles around the massive, black heartstone, their bodies rigid, their eyes as glazed and empty as Leon's. They were puppets, all of them. In the center, on top of the stone, was Isabella. She was magnificent and terrible. She wore robes of black and red, and the amulet at her throat pulsed with a viscous, black light that seemed to drink the red moonlight. Dark energy whipped around her, and shadows with glowing red eyes, creatures I hadn't seen before, patrolled the circle. "Spirits of the old wood," she cried, her voice amplified by magic. "I call you. I give you this pack. I give you this alpha. I give you their life. In exchange, give me their power." She was sacrificing them. All of them. From the woods, her shadow guards dragged a barely conscious Leon, dumping him at the base of the stone. He was weak, dying. And now Isabella hissed for the final piece. The soul. "Once I bind his wolf, the pact is sealed." She raised a black, ritualistic dagger. She was going to kill his wolf, severing their connection forever. "No!" I roared. I burst from the trees. My father was right behind me, bellowing a war cry. Isabella spun, her face a mask of shock. "You? The human? How are you even alive? You forgot to check my bloodline, witch." I spat. The pack, being controlled, turned as one. Their eyes were empty, but they moved to intercept us. "Dad, the pack, don't hurt them." I yelled. "Just block them." "Go," he roared, swinging his axe handle, not the blade, pushing them back. "Get to Leon." I ran, my hammer feeling light in my hands. The shadow creatures, her old spirits, materialized in front of me. I didn't slow down. I was a blacksmith's daughter. I knew how to break things. I swung my hammer, and the iron, forged in my family's fire, connected with the first shadow. It screamed and dissolved. They were vulnerable to pure, forged iron. "Wretched girl!" Isabella shrieked. She raised her hand, and a bolt of black energy shot out, hitting me square in the chest. The pain was unbelievable. The rejection curse inside me exploded. It was the magic she had used to bind Leon, and it recognized its target. I was thrown backward, my hammer flying from my hand. I lay on the ground, gasping. The ice was complete. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. "You should have died when you were rejected," Isabella sneered, gliding toward me. "Now you will die, and your mate will follow." She raised her ritual dagger over me. I'll take your life as an appetizer." I looked past her. At the stone. Leon was watching, his eyes no longer empty. He was fighting. He was conscious. His eyes were wide with terror. "Elise." "No," I thought. "I will not let you win." I looked up. The blood moon. And my moon. They were fighting in the sky. I didn't need to be a wolf. I was the moon. "You forgot." I gasped, the words agony. "You forgot the loophole." Isabella paused. "What?" I screamed. But it wasn't a scream of pain. It was a scream of transformation. In an instant, my bones broke and reformed. Silver fur burst from my skin. My clothes were shredded. I didn't need the full moon. I just needed the moon. I transformed, not into the sleek silver wolf, but into something new. A bridge between. I was on 2 legs, but covered in fur, my hands tipped with claws, my face a snarl of fangs. A true hybrid. A warrior. Isabella stumbled back, her eyes wide with genuine fear. What are you?" "I'm his mate." I roared. I was on her in a second. I was faster, stronger. She blasted me again, but the magic felt weak. My silver fur seemed to absorb it. I grabbed her, my claws sinking into her arms. She screamed. The amulet. Leon's voice, a real, strong shout. He was free. With my new strength, I grabbed the amulet at her throat. It was burning hot, pulsating like a living heart. "No," Isabella shrieked, clawing at my face. I ripped it from her neck. The chain snapped. The world went silent. Isabella froze. The amulet in my hand pulsed once, twice, and then cracked. A shockwave of pure, white-silver energy, my energy, exploded from it. It washed over the clearing. The shadow creatures dissolved. The pack members collapsed, groaning as they woke from their trance. My father stood, breathing hard, leaning on his axe. Isabella, she was aging. Her black hair turned gray, then white. Her skin wrinkled, her power vanishing. The life she had stolen was leaving her. She was nothing without her parasite. She croaked, a terrified old woman. With a final, dusty sigh, she crumbled, her robes falling into a pile of ash. The amulet in my paw turned to dust. It was over. The rejection curse, the ice, it was gone. Completely. The void in my chest filled, not with cold, but with a warm, golden, roaring light. I turned, still in my warrior form. Leon was standing. He was weak, but he was him. His stormy eyes were bright, clear, and fixed on me. The pack was stirring, looking at me with terror. I was a monster. A hybrid. I didn't care. I only looked at him. I felt the change reversing, the power receding, but gently this time. The fur receded, my bones settling. I fell to my knees, naked in the moonlight, human again. But I was not the same. I was strong. The pack was silent. They were staring at their alpha, waiting for his command. He would choose. The witch was gone. The pact was broken. Now he would choose. Leon walked toward me, his steps unsteady, but his eyes unwavering. He didn't stop. He walked right to me, past my hammer, past the ashes of his bride. He knelt in the dirt in front of me, the alpha of Stormfang, kneeling to the blacksmith's daughter. He reached out, his hand shaking, and gently touched the crescent mark on my shoulder. It was glowing, a soft, silver tattoo. Elise, he said, his voice thick with a lifetime of pain and love. They told me, the curse of rejection was death. It was, I whispered, my voice raw. Then you, he said, his hand moving to cut my face, are a miracle. He pulled me to my feet, wrapping his own cloak around my shoulders. He held me as if I were the most precious thing in the universe. I rejected you, he whispered into my hair, his body shaking. The words, she forced them. But my soul never let you go. He pulled back, just enough to look me in the eyes. Alpha Leon of the Stormfang Pack, he said, his voice ringing out for all to hear. Hereby claim you. Elise, daughter of Cole, the silver wolf of the moon. My mate. My Luna. My soul. He didn't wait for an answer. He kissed me. And as he did, the red moonlight faded, replaced by a clean, bright, silver light. The blight on the trees began to recede. The grass seemed to turn green before our very eyes. The pack, our pack, was free. And their true Luna had come home. Epilogue, the forging of souls. 6 months later, the forge was warm. I liked to come here in the mornings. The smell of the coal and the heat of the fire were still home. I wasn't just the Luna of Stormfang, I was still Elise, the blacksmith. The pack had learned to respect both. I was hammering a piece of steel, shaping it into a new hinge for the great hall doors. My arms were strong, my body solid. I was human, but the wolf was always there, sleeping just under my skin, a warm, silver strength. The rejection was a scar, nothing more. A reminder of what we had survived. The door to the forge creaked open, letting in the bright daylight and the scent of pine. You're going to make the betas jealous, my love, Leon's voice rumbled from behind me. Our Luna, doing the work of 3 men. I turned, smiling. I leaned back against the anvil, wiping the sweat from my brow. They're welcome to try and keep up. Besides, this one was warped. It was bothering me. He laughed, a real, full-throated sound that I'd come to cherish. He crossed the forge, his stormy eyes bright and clear. The glazed look was long gone, replaced by a warmth that was reserved only for me. He took my sooty hand and kissed the knuckles. "My father, the blacksmith, says you're better at this than he is," I teased. "Your father is a wise man," Leon said, pulling me close. "He's also terrifying. I'm fairly certain he still keeps that axe by his bed, just in case I get any ideas." "Good," I said, looping my arms around his neck. "Keeps you humble, Alpha." He growled, a playful sound, and buried his face in my neck. The bond between us was a steady, golden glow. It was no longer a pull, but a perfect, settled knowing. We were two halves of a whole. The pack was healing. The lands were green, the harvest was rich, and our people were happy. The blood pact had been a lie, a parasite that my father, now head of the Alpha's council, was gleefully untangling from our laws. We walked out of the forge, my hand in his, and strolled through the village. Pack members, wolf and human alike, greeted us. They bowed to him, but they smiled at me. They called me Luna Silver, a name that had stuck. "The moon is rising soon," Leon said quietly, steering me toward the woods. "Is it?" I pretended to wonder. "You know it is. I can feel you getting antsy. You want to run. And you don't." I challenged. A wicked grin transformed his face. "Last one to the clearing is a rotten omega." He took off, his clothes seeming to melt away as he shifted in a seamless, powerful explosion of motion. The great black wolf, Shadow, was back. I laughed, the sound bright and free. I ran after him, my own transformation greeting me like an old friend. The silver wolf and the black wolf running side by side. We were not bound by a curse or a blood pact or even by fate. We were bound by choice. And we were finally completely free. End of story. Wow, what a journey. From a rejected girl in the dirt to a powerful Luna who saved her entire pack. What part of the story did you find the most intriguing? Was it the agonizing public rejection in the prologue? Or the moment Elise saw her own silver eyes in the mirror? What about when Shadow, Leon's wolf, showed up at her window, proving his soul was still fighting for her? Or that final, epic battle where she transformed into a hybrid warrior and shattered Isabella's amulet? Let me know your favorite part in the comments below. And if you love this story, please show your support. My channel is still young and trying to grow, and every single subscription means the world to me. Hit that like button and subscribe for more intense paranormal romance stories just like this one.